Very good morning, dear children. Dear children, yesterday we started our history chapter 5, which was rulers and buildings. Children, we started the chapter with Qutub Minar. We discussed lot of things about Qutub Minar, and after that, children, we shifted to the next topic, which was engineering skills and construction. So here we talked about the superstructures, and then we have done the two architectural styles. So first architectural style was Trabeate or the Corbelled style. So the figure 2b you can see. So this is the Trabeate style. Fine. Then we talked about the Khandaria Mahadeva temple, and then we talked about Raja Rajeshwara temple. Fine. Then we talked about, children, the other two technological stylistic developments, which was the first was the architectural form which was named as arcuate, and then we talked about the second development, which was the use of limestone cement, which was increasing very which use was increasing very fast. It was a high quality cement, and when it was mixed with stone chips, it became a concrete. So it was really helpful to the buildings. Fine. Then we talked about building temples, mosques, and tanks. Why they were made and who were making them? Obviously, the rulers. And why they were making tanks and mosques? Sorry, temples and mosques. The first thing was important thing was that it was a place of worship, and the second important thing was behind this was to demonstrate their power, wealth, and devotion of the patron. So if you just take example of Raja Rajeshwara one, so we talked about that also, and then we talked about the tanks. Fine. Tanks were made. uh, the kings were getting praise from the common people because tanks and reservoirs were providing water to them. So even some holy places also, they had some tanks. Like if you see Gurdwara Harmandir Sahib, it also had a tank, and the Jami Masjid were also having a small tank in it. Fine. Now we talked after that, we talked about the garden tombs and forts. Fine. Now, sorry, I left this topic. Now we will talk about why were temples targeted. Just now we talked about why were temples built. Fine. Now we are talking about that why were they targeted, why were they destroyed. Fine. Now, children, as the kings, they were making the temples just to demonstrate their power, wealth, and their devotion to the god. So there it is just simple to understand that when they were attacking the another kingdoms, so obviously they were targeting their buildings first, their important buildings first. So in that case, the temples and other buildings, important buildings, were targeted. If you just take example of in of early 9th century, Pandyan king Sri Mara Sri Vallabha. Now he invaded Sri Lanka and he defeated the King Sena I. And the Buddhist monk and the chronicler Dhamakoti noted what he says. He says that the statue of Buddha made entirely of gold in the jewel palace. So it was there. So, and the golden images also of the various monasteries. He seized all these important things. Fine. Then, now after that, now the Sinhalese rulers, at the time of Sena II, they ordered their generals to invade Madurai, which was the capital of Pandyas that time. And the Buddhist chronicler, he noted that the expedition was having a special effort. They just wanted to find out and restore the gold statue of the Buddha. Similarly, if you talk about 11th century, so take example of Chola King Rajendra I. Now he built the Shiva temple in his capital, and that temple was filled with the prized statues, which he seized from the defeated rulers. Like the list included the sun pedestal that was looted, or you can say that was seized by the Chalukyas, Ganesha statue and several statues of Durga, Nandi. They were all seized from the Chalukyas, Eastern Chalukyas. Image of Bhairava, Bhairavi, that is Shiva Parvati, that was seized when they defeated Kalingas in Orissa, and then Kali statue from the Palas of Bengal. So this way, the temple was just demonstrating the power of this king Rajendra I. So Sultan, now third example is of Sultan Muhammad of Ghazni. Now he was contemporary, he was at the time of Rajendra I only, and what he used to do during his campaign in the subcontinent, he used to attack the temples, defeat the kings, and he used to loot all the wealth and idols from here. He was not a very important ruler at that time, but by destroying temples, especially he destroyed the Somnath temple, he just wanted to get the credit as a great hero of Islam. Fine. And moreover, the political culture of the Middle Ages. In this time period, most rulers they tried to display their political might and the military success. They used to show that how strong is their military, that they are attacking and looting the places of worship of defeated rulers. Fine. So it was just to show their power. Fine. Now next topic is garden tombs and forts. Now children, under the Mughal architecture, under the Mughals, children, the architecture became more complex. Fine. Now if you just have a look, so you will just find out that all the monuments which are very very famous, if you talk about this Fatehpur Sikri, that was made by Mughals. If you talk about Red Fort, that was constructed by Mughals. If you talk about Taj Mahal, that is also made by the Mughals. And then Humayun's tomb, means whatever thing you just go through it. Taj Mahal, then Qutub Minar, and Qutub Minar was not made by Mughals, sorry. So most of the monuments, they were built by the Mughals. Fine. So at that time, under the Mughals, the architecture became more complex. It was so beautifully done. Now Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, they all were personally interested, but at the time of Shah Jahan, that time they were personally interested in literature, art, and architecture. And Shah Jahan reign is famous for the architectural, especially the example you have in front of you, that is Taj Mahal. Fine. Now Babur in his autobiography, Babur has described that his interest was in planning and laying out formal gardens placed within rectangular walled enclosures, but and divided into four quarters by artificial channels. So you can just see in this picture how Babur is supervising the workers. They have a channel inside the that's a you that time also they followed these type of things. The water is not wasted, and it is going through channels, and it is circulated again in the garden. Fine. The gardens were called Chahar Bags. Now The gardens at that time were known as Chahar Bags. So from here you can see the examples. Figure 9, it is showing the Chahar Bags. Fine. Now what was there in the Chahar Bagh? 4 gardens. Because of their symmetrical division into quarters, that is why they were known Chahar Bags. 4 garden, and they were divided into quarter on the basis of their symmetrical division. Now if we start from Akbar, some of the most beautiful Chahar Bags were constructed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan in Kashmir, Agra and Delhi. So Akbar also did this. He started it, and then followed by Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and they made Chahar Bags in Kashmir, Agra and Delhi. So just have a look on these Chahar Bags. Fine. Now children, there were several important architectural innovations during Akbar reigns. Obviously during Akbar reign also there were a lot of architectural innovations. Now for inspiration, Akbar's architect turned to the tomb of his Central Asian ancestor Taimur, the central towering dome and the tall gateway Pishtaq became important aspect of the Mughal architecture. Now he was inspired by the tomb of Taimur. Fine, so from there he started this. The central tower, you can just see the tomb in figure 11. So by getting inspired from this, he constructed Humayun's tomb as well. Fine. So it became now a part of Mughal architecture, first visible in Humayun tomb. So Akbar was inspired, and then he constructed Humayun tomb. Now the tomb was placed in the center of huge formal Chahar Bagh. You can see the tomb is in the center, and on the 4 sides it has the Chahar Bagh, and built in the tradition known as 8 paradises or hushed bisht. What does it mean? It means a central hall which is surrounded by 8 rooms. So this was the tradition followed that time. Fine. So it is having 8 rooms, a central hall which is surrounded by 8 rooms. The building was constructed with red sandstone edged with white marble. You can just see red sandstones with the white marble on the top. Fine. Now during Shah Jahan reign, the different elements of Mughal architecture were fused together in a grand harmonious synthesis. Fine. So I told you at the time of Shah Jahan, the architecture became more proper, more prevalent. His reign witnessed a huge amount of construction activity, especially in Agra. So lot of things he did in Agra and Delhi. Who? Shah Jahan. The ceremonial halls, he made ceremonial halls for public and private audiences. So they were known as Diwane Khas or Aam. Fine. Now they were carefully planned. They were placed within a large courtyard, and these courts were also described as Chihil Sutan or the 40 pillared halls. So these halls they were known as 40 pillared halls. Fine. Shah Jahan's audience halls were specially constructed to resemble a mosque. They were just resembling, looking like a mosque only. The pedestal on which the throne was placed was frequently described as the Qibla. Just what was Qibla? We have done it in the previous chapter. It is the direction where the Muslim face at the time of prayer, and why they face this side, because this side is the Makkah. So same thing he did, that he placed his throne in that direction only. Fine. Since everybody faced that direction when court was in the session, so everybody used to face that direction, which was Qibla. The idea of the king as a representative of God on earth was suggested by these architectural features. So they were all facing toward the throne, and it shows that the king was a representative of God. Fine. Now, the connection between the royal justice and the imperial court was emphasized by Shah Jahan in his newly constructed court in the Red Fort at Delhi. Now, there, what he did, behind the emperor's throne, there was a series of Petra Dura. Now, what is Petra Dura? Just see colored hard stones placed in depressions, carved into marbles and sandstones, creating beautiful ornate patterns. So, just before the throne, emperor's throne, there was a series of Petra Dura which depicted the legendary Greek god Orpheus, who was playing a lute, and it was just believed that Orpheus music used to make ferocious beast calm. Means everybody felt calm after listening to this music. Fine. The construction of Shah Jahan's audience hall aimed to communicate that king's justice would treat high and low as equals, creating a world where all could live together with harmony. So he just wanted to communicate that he is going to do justice with all, irrespective of who's high and who's low. Everybody is equal in this, and this will create harmony. People could live together with harmony. Fine. In the early years of his reign, what did he did in starting? Shah Jahan's capital was at Agra. At the starting, it was at Agra, a Delhi where the nobility has constructed their homes on the banks of the river Yamuna. So they used to have their home on the bank of river Yamuna, all the important people. These were set in the in the midst of the formal gardens constructed in Chahar Bagh format. So their home, I mean their houses, they were in the center of the gardens, which were gardens were made in a Chahar Bagh format. Chaharbagh Garden also had a variation that historians describe as a riverfront garden. So they were also called the riverfront garden at this time. Here, the people were not allowed. Sorry, the dwelling was not located in the middle of the Chaharbagh but at its edge. So here now, riverfront garden. So here, if you want to live, you have to not live in the center but at the edge of the Chaharbagh, close to the bank of the river. So Shah Jahan adopted this, the riverfront garden system he adopted, and the layout of Taj Mahal is just in that way only. It is the grandest architectural accomplishment of his reign. Here the white marble mossy mausoleum was placed on the terrace by the edge of the river, and the gardens was to its south. So the gardens are to the south of this. Shah Jahan, what did he do? Developed this architectural form as means to control the access that nobles had to river. So he just wanted to control the access of the nobles which they had at the river. In the new city, Sh- uh, Sh- Shahjahanabad, he constructed it in Delhi. So here the palace, it was commanded the riverfront. So only specially favored nobles like his eldest son Dara Shikho, they were only given access to the river. All others had to construct their homes in the city, but that should be away from river Yamuna. Fine. So you can just see this is Shahjahanabad, and this is riverfront gardens construction, how they were made. Fine. Now the last topic of the chapter is, children, region and empire. Fine. Now, as construction activity increased between the 8th and the 18th centuries, there was also a considerable sharing of ideas across regions. They were just sharing each other ideas. The traditions of region were adopted by another. They were sharing the ideas as well as they were adopting the traditions of one another. Now, if in Vijayanagara, for example, the elephant stable of the rulers was strongly influenced by the style of architecture found in the adjoining sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. Fine. So, what they adopted? They adopted the elephant stable of the rulers. And how, from where they get influence? They influenced by this from the sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. Now, in Vrindavan, near Mathura, the temples were constructed in which style? In the architectural style, and from where they copied it, that the here the architectural style was somewhat similar, means almost same to the Mughal palaces which were at the Fatehpur Sikri, the capital of Akbar. Fine. Now, the creation of large empires that brought different regions under the rule helped in the cross fertilization of artistic forms and architectural styles. So, here all means it was a mixture now. Everything was becoming a mix of each other's style of architecture. Now, Mughal rulers, they were particularly very skilled in adapting regional architectural styles. They were very good at this in the construction of their own buildings. So they were just giving a, you know, they were just mixing up everything. Like in Bengal, if you take example, the local rulers, they have developed a roof that was designed to resemble the thatched hut. It was just like a resembling like a thatched hut. Now Mughal, they liked this Bangla dome and they adopted this. Fine. So much that they used it in their architecture. So they liked the style and they even used in their architecture. The impact of other region was also evident. So they were having impact. Some regions were putting impact on others. Akbar's capital at Fatehpur Sikri, there are many buildings which show the influence of the architectural styles of Gujarat and Malwa. Now, Akbar's Fatehpur Sikri, they have copied the style of Gujarat and Malwa. Even though the authority of the Mughal rulers waned in the 18th century, the architectural styles developed under their patronage were constantly used and adapted by other rulers whenever they tried to establish their kingdom. So, after even their authority was declined as well, but still everybody was adapting each other's style when they were establishing their own kingdoms, children. So this was all about today's topic. Thank you and have a nice day.